Welcome to the Profit and Loss Podcast. I'm Adam Tidrow.
And I'm Jahaira Zapata. This is a dive into the minds of entrepreneurs and small business owners. We talk about what keeps them up at night, and more importantly, what gets them up in the morning.
Join us every week for conversations with real business owners as they share their successes, struggles, and lessons learned.
All right, guys, we are back with a new episode of the Profit and Loss Podcast. Hello. You're going to hear an amazing interview with Crystal Wallace of Founders Go Big, which is a program from Launch New York. So that's super exciting. Definitely get your notepads ready. There's some tips and things to think about for small business owners that are potentially thinking about going big.
Yeah.
But before we get into that interview, we've seen the news, we've heard the news. You know, a lot of people are commenting on the lack of employees, basically like the shortage of employees, so to speak, right? Because of everything that's happening with the pandemic and with unemployment benefits and such. But we actually came across an article today, which is very hopeful. And this is actually from the Buffalo Business First. And it talks about 3 local restaurants here in Buffalo that are actually not having any trouble keeping their workforce.
Yes. So there are several ways that they incentivize their employees to stay and to bring in new employees, which is really difficult right now. Before I get into those, I want to comment that it's interesting that the labor market is one of the harder ones to, I think, predict, just because it's one of the few places where the actual supply has a consciousness, and steel beams and widgets and cars can't tell you, if they want to be bought or not, if they want to be put into use. But when you have a market that is, the supply is human beings and their work, it's very, what a thing to have to manage. So right now we know a lot of people are not working or not going back to work immediately because, they some of it is there's health concerns, whether it's, they're worried about going back into an office, they're worried about going back into work, or maybe they're dealing with long-term impacts of having COVID. There's also things like wanting more flexibility, wanting to work from home, wanting to work remotely, whether it's full-time or part-time or whatever. Or if some people don't want to, I know people who are taking a couple different part-time jobs to make up for a full-time job they lost, because they enjoy the flexibility of that and they don't want to have to do the same thing for 40 or 50 hours a week. They can do a couple different things for 20 or 30 hours a week each. So, but the article from Buffalo Business First talks about several ways that these business owners here in Buffalo keep their employees happy, because retention is so much cheaper than having to go out and get new employees. And the first one that popped out to me is creating opportunities for advancement when possible. So when you have good employees, the best way to keep them happy is to create opportunities for them to grow. Good employees are often driven or ambitious, and if they're sticking with you, there's a reason they want to be there. So what can you do to make sure that they know they have a future there? Nobody wants to go to be in an entry level position forever, right? So, I think a lot of people, at least you and I know you and I have been in positions where, hey, I want to grow. I need that next challenge.
Right. Yeah. And I think for me, what always sticks out, and you'll see it in the article, some of these things are almost common sense, but it's like the saying goes, common sense isn't that common, right? So just kind of showing people that they're valued with like the little things, right? Just little, in this particular article, it talks about, working in kind of like a restaurant type area, and this particular person, she liked frying her eggs in the morning for breakfast, but her pan, was looking a little worn. And so the owner bought her a new pan, right? That sounds very, very just like a minuscule thing to think about, right? But that actually meant a lot to this other person, right? And so it's those little things that you just see that really do make a difference. It shows that the business and the owner, I should say, are invested in you as a human being, not just as their employee, not just trying to see what they can get out of you, right? They want
Yeah.
to see this relationship flourish. And like Adam said, if there's room for growth, like that's great. So yeah, so definitely take a look at this article, guys. It's again, it's very kind of straight to the point. I think very, very simple. But if you can master some of these small things, like you'll see that your employees want to stick with you, even if, there may be someone else trying to kind of poach your employees, so to speak.
Yeah. And one of the quickest ways to get somebody to poach your employees is to not pay them enough. We talk about that a lot right now. It's a big topic, is, things like the $15 minimum wage. And I was talking to somebody 2 days ago, and they didn't realize that the federal minimum wage is only $7.25. And, here in New York State, it's like $3 higher, and it's on the path to $15. And I'm not, as an employee of Pathstone, I'm not advocating for a certain wage, but I can tell you that paying people for the value they bring, that's how you need to, that's how I think compensation should be set up, is based on the value that somebody brings to your organization, and knowing that they bring a multiple of their salary or their wage it's something, so you need to work to pay them. Otherwise somebody else will. But
right.
With that in mind, you have to package that with those other two things of, appreciation and advancement. And because if, like my old boss used to tell me, if they come because of the price, they'll leave because of the price. If somebody's
Right.
coming to you because you're paying well, they'll leave if somebody else pays a little bit better. So,
Right.
it really comes down to those 3 Ps: promotion, payment, appreciation.
I see how Adam slipped in that last P, but it doesn't actually start with a P. But we'll let him slide on that one.
Well, I'm from the Midwest, so it's appreciation.
All right, guys. So Adam, you want to introduce our guest for today?
Yes. So our guest for the day is Crystal Wallace. She is a chief strategist of CMW Services and a program manager for the Launch New York Founders Go Big program. Crystal Wallace, thank you so much for joining us. Very happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
So Crystal, can you tell us a little bit about what Founders Go Big is, and what's the mission for anybody out there who doesn't already know?
Yes. So Founders Go Big is the intentional diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative that Launch New York has, instituted in order to reach underserved and underrepresented founders who want to go big. And this, I think we're going to talk about what the idea of going big means, but essentially there's this idea that entrepreneurship first isn't even a career path. So I think we're kind of getting into this mindset that entrepreneurship actually exists as a career path for people to choose. But now we also want to take that thought of entrepreneurship and then take it a step up. So the idea of going big means that, according to Launch, it's essentially you want to take your business to the next level. You have a high growth business. So that's one that will potentially gross 8 to 10 million within the next 5 to 7 years. And also a key piece is that you are open to equity investment. So the pathway of growth is through equity investment. So does that answer that question?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that concept of going big. We work a lot with, we call them small businesses, but a lot of the businesses we work with in this space are really micro businesses. They exist to produce a salary for, the owner or the owners and maybe 1 or 2 other folks. But I love this concept of saying, hey, go big, think bigger. Those high growth kind of businesses, again, 8 to 10 million in revenue. So I love that.
Yeah, I guess I would ask, because I mean, when you think of that number, right, 8 to 10 million, that's a bit like jarring. So what I would almost ask, like, what's the difference between the founders that get involved with Founders Go Big and, let's say, like the small businesses that we currently kind of assist to start? Is it a mindset thing, or
it's a
where's
mindset.
that thing? Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of mindset and trajectory. So there's a lot of intentionality that goes into the mindset of going big. So the idea is I'm going to have an IPO. I'm going to have an exit. I'm going to actually raise funds with venture capital. So first, for many of the founders that we're working with, we're introducing a new concept, right? So the difference is just adopting that mindset.
Okay.
In my opinion. Now, there are some clients that come to us who have been in existence for 10 or so years. And so maybe there's an additional subset of their business that they're looking to take large or take big, take to the next level, if you will. Or they might be interested in multiple locations nationwide. The service might be reaching a point where it's going to go global. So that's kind of the difference. I will say traditionally, Launch New York looked for businesses that were somewhat in that infancy. So I won't say infancy stage, but we'll call it like that vetting stage. So you were coming up with your minimum viable product. You knew who your customers were. You knew that there was a need for for your business in the market. A lot of our clients, they run the gamut, but a lot of them are B2B companies. I will say that in Founders Go Big, we are opening up some B2C to accommodate some B2C companies. So the focus though is that there's this intentionality that I'm going to take my business to the next level. Is a lot of the time it's intentional from the onset. In some instances, it happens, after the fact, where after you've been in existence for a few years, and then now you say, okay, this is the next step for me.
Gotcha.
So within that mission is the ultimate goal of Founders Go Big is it to create economic development? Is it to create wealth within certain communities? Is it to fill gaps in the market? Is it all of that? Maybe what are the goals and then which ones are most important to you personally?
Okay, so definitely all of that. So Launch's mission is to increase the number of startups that are in Western New York. And Western New York is categorized as the 27 westernmost counties within New York State. So that has always been one of Launch's central focus, one of the central focuses of Launch. And so then you're also coupling the idea that the majority of the counties and some of the geographic regions within those westernmost counties are already somewhat underrepresented or underserved when it comes to entrepreneurship, just regardless of adding any other type of demographic measure in there, they're already underserved. So the idea is to increase the number of entrepreneurial starts, the number of jobs that are created within our region, and then to really show that, again, this is a career path, but this is also a path to generational wealth.
Right.
So that's the idea, even if at some point in time there is an exit from the company and that particular company, is acquired, or, those particular founders are bought out, and then the company moves on to a different geographic location. The impact, I think, serves multiple purposes. So I hope that does make sense. Now, what is most important to me is the awareness of the idea of going big. So I have been meeting with a lot of client companies or potential client companies. And this idea was, not even something that they would have considered before. And it's interesting. When we talk with Duncan, and we all know Duncan,
right.
But he said, I never thought that I could go big. I didn't even think I'm thinking $100,000 or making $1 million, but we're talking 8 to 10 million. That's mind blowing to me. But if I have the mentorship and I have a pathway to follow, it's not like clear cut. Of course, no entrepreneurial path is clear cut.
Right.
But if there's a pathway and support to help me get there, why wouldn't I try it? So it's really the idea of engaging folks to try. And Founders Go Big understands that, we understand that every client company might not make it big. We understand that. But we hope to provide the tools to help you at least get your business to the next level, whatever that is for you.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what's the process? So let's say you speak to a potential client company,
Mhm.
like what can they have in mind of like, okay, this is roughly the process that I'm going to have to go through if I'm going to
Okay.
join this program?
Well, the process, I will say generally, there's an application. So
Mhm.
a client fills out an application, they get a response letting them know that someone will be in contact with them within 2 to 3 business days. Essentially, we review the application. Now, if the client is a Founders Go Big client, there's typically a connection with me so that I can meet with the company and learn a little bit more about them.
Mhm.
And to determine if it's a good fit. So we
Right.
always want to determine if the potential client is a good fit for launch, and if launch is a good fit for the potential client. There are some companies, even if they are in the ideation stage, the idea itself isn't one that we can see going big. Like there's a disconnect with how this is going to help make that person money and help make potential investors money. So we
Gotcha.
do look at that.
Mhm.
But I will say that whether they speak with me first or they speak to our intake committee,
Mhm.
at some point in time, if there's a designation made, if the client company is a bit early, they might be asked to reapply within 3 to 6 months. If the
Okay.
client company has a good idea, but they're a bit early, they might be asked to join our customer discovery workshop, which Jahira has been a part of before.
Yes, I have.
And then if they are a person of color, a woman, a veteran, or any other underrepresented or underserved group, they also might be asked to join Founders Go Big. So that's the typical trajectory. I will say, well, I love to give this as context just because it's a dose of reality, I guess. We have served over, I think, 1,250 companies since
Wow.
2012.
Nice.
But we have funded 74. We might be
Okay.
funding 75, like another one tomorrow, if
Mhm.
they go through the IC committee and their pitch is, successful. So we have a lot of companies who are in mentorship with us for a while. And the mentorship is a bit different. A lot of times we think of technical assistance. That's can be a part of the mentorship, but a lot of the times it's helping that client company get themselves to the point where they're ready to go before the investment committee to pitch for funding. And funding is not an automatic thing with launch, as we can see based
Mhm.
off of those numbers. So.
Sure.
Okay. Gotcha.
So on a broader scale, and I don't want to take us too far from the program from Founders Go Big, but on a broader scale, what needs to happen, whether it's from a practical standpoint or a policy standpoint, to increase the number of businesses owned by people of color and people who may have disabilities or people who are veterans? What can we do to increase those number of businesses and the size of those businesses in our communities?
Well,
can you solve this problem right now on this podcast? So that's what I'm asking.
The answer would be no. So I think the first thing, and we talked about this a little bit in some of our advisory board meetings and just in conversation around the type of program we want to provide. The first thing I think is to recognize that all businesses are not the same.
Right.
And sometimes we're taking a business and we're trying to compare it to some rubric that was set up by folks who don't solve problems in the communities that these businesses would potentially be in.
Right.
And so they're not given as much, they're not taken as seriously as other businesses.
Mhm.
I know so many micro businesses. I know so many people who have started micro businesses who are considered entrepreneurs, even though we might call them micro businesses.
Mhm.
And it's the idea that, like you said, I'm creating a salary so that I can feed my family, so that I can maybe put a couple other people on my payroll and move forward. But and I'm on to the next thing, or I'm doing multiple things like that. I think we have to open our mind to all businesses are not high growth.
Right.
All businesses are not going to be Main Street businesses. And some people are very comfortable having maybe $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in revenues a year from their side hustle and be okay with that. Now, in terms of legislation, or it was a broader term. I think we need to maybe change some of the metrics and the lens that we look through to determine what a business really is and what it isn't. And then provide more support I know we provide like educational and technical assistance, but also like making sure that that translates over to be understood by the person who is looking for that level of assistance, if that makes sense. So we try to fit them in the B school model, and everybody does not fit in the B school model. It just does not happen. I have a client that I work with CMW Services, and I use this term P&L, right? I just said, I mean, funny, this is profit and loss, right?
Right.
And he said, what is that? I said, so in my circle, we call it profit and loss. And I was like, okay, we get hung up on semantics here. But I had to like listen to what he was saying and say, okay, well, to be inclusive, I will call it profit and loss from now on, but also recognize that it's also called P&L. So if you're getting to another circle and you hear it used, you don't feel ignorant. So the other piece I think is dealing with some of the imposter syndrome that is in our community, our communities.
That's huge.
Like feeling accepted and thinking understanding what you do has value and has purpose. A lot of times because our friends and family don't support our business, or we are selling something that someone else sells and we see the competition and we think that they're doing something better than I feel like we all have a lane that we can drive in, you know? And when it's time for expansion, when it's time for growth, there are resources available. You might have to, stretch a little bit to get some of those resources, but understand that if you have a product, service, or something that you believe that should go to market, yes, vet it. Yes, make sure it's a good thing. But if you have demonstration of sales, like people are actually purchasing your product, then you're obviously serving some kind of need. So I think that's important as well, to make sure that we recognize that what we're doing has purpose, has value, and it means something in the marketplace because people are actually gravitating to it. So that's part of the imposter syndrome. That's the whole thing, but not the whole thing. But just feeling that what we can do can solve a problem within our community. I think that's important. So I hope that answers the question.
Good answer. Yeah.
I think that's definitely, and I know Adam and I, we talk about this all the time. That's something that is very huge, even here at Pathstone. A lot of the businesses, our clients that come through, that's definitely one of those things that, that we talk about and people mention, well, how there's like almost like two sides of the spectrum, right? There are some people that are very like, I'm doing the same thing as, 5 other places, but my product is better because I do it, right? Like there's that kind of school of thought. And then there's definitely the other people that tend to be a bit more hesitant, saying, okay, well, what exactly sets me apart from the rest of the market? Like, we're all kind of in the same price point, and maybe in the same area, things like that. So imposter syndrome is very, very prevalent, especially in the communities that we serve. But we are just going to take a quick break and we will be back with Crystal Wallace. All
right, Adam. So how about you tell the people who we are?
Absolutely. Pathstone Enterprise Center is a CDFI. That's a community development financial institution, meaning that we help expand access to capital for entrepreneurs and business owners who don't traditionally have those bankable businesses, or maybe they have an issue with their credit score. Maybe they're a startup. Either way, we come in where the banks can't. We come in to help loan for working capital, equipment purchases. As a matter of fact, we can even help with gap financing. So if you're able to get most of your money from a bank and you need a little bit more, we can even help out by giving you that little bit more. The best way to get a hold of us is to call us at 716-436-2560, or you can email us directly at pecky@pathstone.org. That's PECI@pathstone.org.
We are back with Crystal Wallace, the Chief Strategist of CMW Services, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And she's also the Program Manager for the Launch New York Founders Go Big program. Crystal, I want to talk a little bit more about Founders Go Big, and then I want to hear all about CMW Services. But what's the landscape of Founders? What do you think the landscape of Founders Go Big will look like in the future? And what are some of the industries that you're working with right now? What are some of those businesses? What industries do they come from?
Okay, so I'll start with the industries and then go to the landscape, if that's okay.
Sure.
So it's funny. I'm always sending an email or sending a Slack to our CEO and president, Marnie Levine, shout out, to ask her, okay, so do we work in this company applied and then they were a distillery. I said, okay, will we accept the distillery company? She says, no problem. Okay, well then we will. So the broad answer to the industry is really, we accept almost every industry. There needs to be, with the exception of we're a gambling company, we probably wouldn't accept.
Right.
So there are some caveats there. But I will say representative of what we have now, we have about 5 to 6 companies in the fashion, merchandising, and retail industry. We have a few different app development companies. So one is actually, she's a part of Founders Go Big, but she's also beyond Founders Go Big, if that makes sense. But she's still a part of Founders Go Big. Agape, and she'll be Agape, Kadisha Bryant. I'm going to go with Bryant because I don't want to butcher her last name. But she'll be actually speaking at our Ask the Expert event on September 16th at 4 p.m. But she has a relationship app called Agape. We also have a few other companies in the other manufacturing space, if that makes sense. So some in construction, some are manufacturing sports aid products. And then we also have some in the B2C and B2B world. So we have some of the food and retail manufacturing and production. We have a couple in, let's see, we run the gamut if it doesn't make sense. If you can't see.
Sure.
Yeah, we definitely run the gamut. So it really, we're open to almost every industry. We also just have to make sure it's a good fit with the portfolio that we have currently.
Sure.
So that's another thing that we take a look
Okay.
Okay, great.
Gotcha.
And what do you think the future looks like for both Founders Go Big, but also the businesses in the communities that you're serving?
I think this is an amazing time to investigate if the idea that's been brewing around in your head or, that you've been carrying around for such a long time. I think this is an amazing time to see that thing come to fruition and to test it. I feel like the market is really just open for new, innovative startups, ideas, businesses, services. So in terms of the future of Founders Go Big, it's bright. We are actually in the process of launching our launch station. So launch station is the name that we have decided on for our virtual office platform. And it is
great.
Virtual incubator. So that's exactly what it is. There's office space, we're all co-located virtually on our platform. We also host events on our platform. So actually today at 4, we're hosting a customer discovery orientation for our new clients and some of our returning clients. The Founders Go Big Resource Center is another huge thing that I'm super excited about unveiling. We'll be unveiling it little by little, but we'll have a launch within the next couple of months or so. But essentially, it's the resources that help our founders get to the next level. So Launch already provides that EIR mentorship that we provide, as well as some other, webinars and some other technical assistance. But this Founders Go Big Resource Center takes that a step further. So it's a bit more intentionally focused on the industries that we serve, as well as some of the topics that our clients are most interested in. And so that's educational resources, as well as additional opportunities to network and connect with key experts in their industry, as well as opportunities to connect with your peers. So within the launch station, within the resource center, we're going to be housing cohorts within that space. And actually the launch station has a Founders Go Big center, actually. So a whole section dedicated to the Founders Go Big clients. Some of our companies will be co-located there as well. So it's just an awesome opportunity for anyone who's interested in taking their business to the next level. Go ahead and apply and join us. We're growing together, and we're excited to be able to provide these services and these resources to our community.
Wonderful.
That's exciting news for sure.
For sure. So now tell us about CMW Services and how you got paired up with Founders Go Big.
Okay. So CMW Services is a strategic consulting and coaching firm. I started in, I've actually been doing this for many years, but I fully incorporated in 2019.
Okay.
And the idea was I would slowly start my business and then eventually leave, my full-time gig. I worked at the University of Buffalo actually for 7 years at the time. And it just became increasingly evident that it was time to go.
Sure.
And so one day I just made this decision, hey, if it's now or never. Like the only thing that can happen is, give up and try something else. So I resigned from my full-time gig and said, okay, we're going to pursue some consultant work. I was thinking more like IC work, that type of thing until I got myself, on my feet. So there was actually an opportunity in the DC, Maryland area for me to work with the DC public school system. So I actually did some contracting work in Maryland at the very beginning of 2020, and then COVID happened. And that was great. Right?
Surprise.
Surprise, I'm here. But it allowed me to pivot, and I was already pivoting, so it was okay. I felt prepared. So because I took the leap a couple months earlier, I was already in grow mode. I was already in establishment / go mode. So I wanted to make sure I had strong systems in place that helped me meet with my clients. I already had some clients that came over that I was working with prior to fully going, full-time, I guess. And so just making sure I had systems in place to be able to support them and just to really focus on what my key offerings were. And so I was able to really grow throughout the pandemic. And then I had the opportunity to, I guess, showcase or share a little bit more about my business on a networking call that was hosted by the Western New York Support Group. And Karen from the Oshai Foundation said, hey, I want you to meet Marnie Levine. I said, okay. First of all, I didn't know Karen. So I was like, okay, thank you. I remember saying this very key phrase during my 3 to 4 minutes. And I said, my heart is with the startup. And I said, I don't know, I wasn't going to say that, but I said, I need to say this because I wanted to be true to who I am. Like I work with other nonprofits and it's awesome, but entrepreneurship has always been the area in which I want to impact the world. Just always has been. I went to school for, I went to go get my PhD for strategy at this University of Buffalo. And it was all due to entrepreneurship. I wanted to impact entrepreneurs at a very, as my passion, I wanted to be able to do that. So I met Marnie and we had a conversation and she said, I want you to consider running this program that we have called Founders Go Big. And the rest is history. So I came on in January and funny enough, I'm not an employee of Launch. I'm an independent contractor. So everything that I get to do is through my business. Right. But I get to impact in such a great way. And I mean, the Launch team is amazing. It's just, I call it answered prayer sometimes. It's just really been an amazing experience. And I get to do what I love every single day. So it really doesn't feel like work. And I know people say that sounds super cliche, but it's the truth. It really doesn't feel like work. It's been a dream. So I really that's how everything came together. Yeah.
That's great. What a story.
Yeah. I mean, essentially the universe kind of gave you what you were asking for, right?
Yeah, I prayed and I said, Lord, I want to work for myself. I want to work from home and I want to work on multiple contracts. And that's exactly what I do. So I thank God for that.
What a dream. I love it.
That's amazing. I think anytime that you get to work with people that you really enjoy working with and at the level that you want to work with, according to your rules, so to speak, right? Yeah. Like I'm sure that's kind of the ideal world for most people.
It feels like a dream. I was actually literally thinking about that same thing a couple of days ago. It's like, wow, I didn't think this was possible. I didn't think that. I just thought that was so I don't know, selfish or maybe just like high in the sky. But when you literally can do exactly what you want to do.
Yeah.
Not that you do everything that you want to do. There are some
Right.
things you do that you might not necessarily want to do, but that's okay. But for the most part, it's having the impact that you've always wanted to have, and it's helping the folks that you always wanted to help. That's like,
Right.
it's priceless. So
Good for you for serving that mission. That's awesome. And for living it the way, and for serving it in the way you want to. So Crystal Wallace, where can people find more about you and more about Founders Go Big?
okay, so I'm gonna first say you can email me at cwallace@launchnewyork.org. And then also, if you just go to launchnewyork.org and then click on entrepreneurs and click on Founders Go Big, you'll find the Founders Go Big website, and it has a ton of information and also how you can apply.
Crystal Wallace, thank you so much. We'd love to have you back. And anybody looking to get involved with Founders Go Big, get in touch with Crystal.
I love to come back.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Crystal. It was a pleasure having you. And we look forward to the future for you and for Founders Go Big.
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure being with you.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all our social media platforms, and anywhere that you listen to your podcast. We'll see you in about 2 weeks.